name is Antim Amalan. I graduated from National Law University, and since then I worked with some of the well-known e-commerce startups without going into the names and all, in especially marketplace e-commerce and hospitality side and insurance side in Delhi as an off counsel. Then I joined Vakil Search around 2 years back, where I have been focusing on early stage startups. So to brief you something about Vakil Search, it's a early stage startup consulting firm, right? Starting from all the things that I mentioned earlier, like corporate laws, setting up your company to IP, we do it all. Quickly brief through about Vakil Search. Basically, it's a legal tech company compared to a traditional firm, CL or a law firm. It's completely online, and the solutioning are always given or catered through a technology stack. Like the way tech has revolutionized other fields, especially like starting from logistics to e-commerce to a lot of other things. We are trying to make the same happen in legal, wherein we are bringing in products to automate the legal as much as we can within the limitations of the legal system in India, right? And these are some numbers. So now coming to the core topic, which is regulatory compliance and the need for policy making in startups. Quite an interesting topic, but before we approach there, let's have 4 to 5 entrepreneurs discussing about their startups, what they are doing so far. If you can start with anybody, any volunteers, just introduction about what you're doing, and maybe I'll take an example from there, take a cue from there, and try and explain this is how law interacts with your business model. I think that will be more lively. So starting with you, sir, if you can.
So we are from Antim Labs.
Okay.
We are working on drones, building a cloud platform for managing thousands of drones.
Thousands of?
Drones.
Drones. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. So you're into manufacturing of drones.
Right now we are not in manufacturing. We are building the cloud platform.
Okay.
Once we finish that, we'll be focusing on the manufacturing.
Okay, cloud platform of what?
Cloud platform. Where in that platform you can monitor and manage all the drones.
Monitor and manage all the drones.
Yes.
That's great.
And
That's great.
And even you can fly the drone from the cloud platform.
Sure. That's interesting. So, interesting business model. Everybody understands what he's trying to do. I'm sure you guys must be interacting before. So, let's skip through the incorporation or business setup part. If anybody is interested in that, I'll definitely come to it. So, let's say even if you're covering in just about the business setup of I didn't get your name.
Arkin Labs.
Arkin Labs business setup process. Let's say they will think about incorporation or a LLP, depending on what the founders are trying to build. Is it a closed setup? Are they limited to their number of people and completely planning to remain bootstrapped in the future? Then they can go with partnerships, or they can go with a private limited. I'm sure you all must have crossed through that period or that phase where you were always thinking about what kind of entity to choose. So once that type of entity is chosen and you have started your registration process, right, then comes the requirement for policy making. And policy making is always connected to the regulatory environment, right? If you take example for a drone based startup, for example, that too which works and has related to cloud. So two things I can pick from here is cloud and drones, right? So then I'll have to see that for drones, what are the regulatory environment? DGCA, for example, right? There is some drone-based registrations that have come lately in the last 3 to 4 years. So what is the regulations that DGCA is prescribing? We'll have to understand that first. Then if you are operating on cloud, then Information Technology Act obviously goes without saying. What kind of data security, what kind of information security should we be having as per IT Act, information security practices, rules, and all of that is what we have to understand. Then once we have understood that, whether the first stage will come that what kind of registrations I have to do, like under DGCA for example, whether it is applicable to me or not, what is the applicability requirement, what documents do I have to prepare, what kind of net worth are they asking for, all of these things once we are clear, then we move to the policy making side. Because if there is a regulatory authority, let's say DGCA for drones and anything relating to aviation, for example, if you are a fintech company, then it's RBI or SEBI. So these regulators will prescribe a particular regulation for you, right? And accordingly, you have to make the policies. Clear? Then this is one type of policy making that we do with the regulator part. Other type of policy making or documentation comes when we get into the business environment, which is called like private relationship. Now, as a drone startup, he will be required to interact with a lot of, let's say, clients. First of all, one side is clients. On the other side, there are other businesses with whom he will be interacting. For example, if in the future, if he gets into manufacturing, then he has to buy the OEM components or something from an OEM. So going for an OEM contract with the manufacturer and the component provider is one thing that we'll have to take care of. So this is the basic, thought process that you can start from as an entrepreneur. Otherwise, I'll go through the slides one by one, and we'll take care of how things generically happen in a startup environment when it comes to legal and compliance. Corporate compliance in general can be categorized into three types. Okay, I can bet on it that there are not any further categories of compliance, at least in India, right? So first is regulatory compliance. I just explained what regulatory compliance is, right? It is always specific to your business model, depending on what business you are doing, right? Who is the prime regulator in your space, right? And what are the regulations prescribed by such regulator? So, okay, some common regulators I will mention like RBI, SEBI, then IRDA, DGCA. There's so many if we start speaking. Second is labor compliance based on the employer-employee relationships. Mostly regulatory compliances are with central authorities, can be by state authorities as well at times. Second type will be labor compliance, like I mentioned, it's always from the state authorities. Why is that? Because in Constitution of India, labor compliance is within the domain of the state. What kind of employer-employee relationship should be there? What kind of laws protect your employees? What kind of laws protect your employer? It's always a misconception that labor laws are there to protect the employees. But like I said, it's a misconception. There are laws to protect the employer as well, right? Then third, last but not the least, statutory compliance. Statutory compliance is always based on the type of entity. Examples are Companies Act, LLP Act, Partnership Act. So based on the type of entity you are running, what kind of statutory laws apply to you, and there are certain compliances prescribed under it, registrations for sure, right? So these are the types of compliances that we should be keeping in our mind as an entrepreneur. Any questions here before we start? If you want, we can go into the details of any of the compliances. If any more example, this is an opportunity for any of the startups, any of the entrepreneurs to inquire and understand. Yeah.
My name is Ganesh. I'm
Hi Ganesh.
of
Of what?
Sarah
Saratatva. Okay. Sure.
So with me, Dr. Ava is also there. She is
All right.
co-founder.
All right.
So our company is working on specialty chemicals to produce ceramics material, non-oxide ceramics material. So such companies, what kind of regulatory complaints we have?
What kind of ceramics did you mention?
Non-oxide.
Non-oxide ceramic materials.
Aerospace applications.
Okay, good question. Very specific, very typical, but I'll try to attempt this. So, if you are a chemical companies, then can you please elaborate as to what is your manufacturing setup? Where are you manufacturing? What are you manufacturing?
Currently, we are working with IIT Madras.
Huh?
There we are using the laboratory facility.
Okay, only the laboratory. You don't have your own manufacturing
No,
setup.
we do not have.
Yeah,
Right
go ahead.
now, we do not have.
Okay.
Actually, our company is a spin-off from the Laboratory of High Performance Ceramics at Department of MME.
Okay.
So now we are using that laboratory. So that
Understood.
we produce chemicals in that laboratory.
Chemicals will be silicon, organic polymers based chemicals.
Understood. Good question. So I'll try to attempt it now. So now you are in a sandbox environment. Let's say you are in a lab environment. So most laws do not apply to you because you haven't actually delved into manufacturing in a scale where you have your own manufacturing facility and all, right? So there are two ways I'll try to deal with your business model. First is the manufacturing setup. Second is the business setup. Okay. So I'll start with the regulatory things, the registrations and all. Then we'll go. So if you are a chemical company, then you depending on your output and the volume of output, you fall under category. I would say category red or category orange of the Pollution Control Board norms, right? There are various environment protection laws in India, right? Mostly to control and sustain the environment in terms of the Air Act, Water Act, and Land Act. So, in what ways are you polluting any of these three elements that are very, very important for human sustenance? Is what the Pollution Control Board looks at. Every state has a pollution control board, the state pollution control board. So if you are emitting some certain chemicals as a byproduct, I'm sure there will be, right?
Yes.
So when you set up your manufacturing facility, the first thing that should be in your mind is to take a consent to establish or consent to operate, right, from the regulator, which is pollution control board, right?
So we have to approach pollution control board before we start a company. Is what? Before
Yeah,
we set up
or no, the regulation allows you to approach and through consultative approach with the pollution control board, set it up within 30 days.
Oh,
Okay. In some states it is 30 days, in some states it is 60 days. So yeah.
That doesn't stop there, right? Like they have a periodic process of renewing it.
Yeah, they have a periodic process of renewing it, of course. When it comes to manufacturing, things such as pollution control board, BIS and all. In BIS, I'll also elaborate. There are two types of certification schemes. One is where you go voluntarily. The other one is compulsory certification scheme. Now it has like around 40 to 50 items which fall under a compulsory certification scheme. I cannot particularly recollect if this kind of business will be there, but if it is there, then you'll have to go for BIS as well, right? But I'm thinking your business is more like B2B. So in that case, if the consumer is not involved, BIS certification may not be as much relevant, right? If you're not directly selling to the consumers.
Different products. So for chemical products, of course, B2B is what we are targeting. We also have instruments. So
Okay.
there we are targeting B2C also.
Okay, what kind of instruments?
Ceramic processing instruments.
Okay, then we'll have to, I think, carefully look at the BIS Act and understand if your particular item falls under the list of items given under compulsory certification scheme. Other than that, BIS is also like a thing that creates a credibility. So if you're in your category, if BIS is there, then we can definitely go and get it. So I started with pollution control board, went to BIS. Okay, so once these things are done, then the statutory compliance will come. If you are a company, then what kind of, how many shareholders do you have, and all of that things, how many, at least 5 filings a year as a mandatory reporting to the MCA has to be done, right? Those dealing with it for some years will understand, like basically appointing an auditor, filing your management forms, NGT 7 forms, AOC form, directors KYC, all of those things you have to do as a statutory compliance. Then second part comes the labor, right? Because in labor there are usually 2 primary categories, okay? One is shops and establishment route, second is Factories Act route. Okay, you can either fall under Shops and Establishment or Factories Act. There is no other way. It's not like you can avoid any of these. Except for very certain exceptions such as government bodies or certain hospitals and certain other institutions which are exempted from Shops and Establishment Act. Apart from it, I think in a manufacturing setup, depending on the kilowatt of energy being consumed and state to state guidelines, you can always define whether you are going under Factories Act or not. If you are not going under Factories Act, let's say you are a tech company, software company, something like working in an in-house environment, then you have to go under Shops and Establishment. Before 2015, Shops and Establishment was not mandatory. After 2015, there was a new Model Shops and Establishment Act by the current incumbent government, which prescribed that a lot of companies were trying to avoid labor regulations by hiring every employee as a consultant basis. So then government said, doesn't matter if you have 0 employees, you have to get this registration, correct? Then other things under labor. So let's say your setup will go under Factories Act because you are into manufacturing, right? So under Factories Act, there are certain compliances. How many laborers are working? What working conditions are you giving to them, right? What is their check-in time, check-out time, their holidays, their payment of wages, Minimum Wages Act, the PF ESI that you are deducting from them. In case of a hazardous environment, if they are dealing with hazardous chemicals, you'll have to make a comprehensive, insurance for your employees, right? So all of these, around 14 to 15 labor laws are there, on an average in every state across India, which you have to deal with, right? And then depending on other set of things that we can think of is cross-border compliances. If you're planning to import export, right, then there are other set of compliances that can apply on you. Indian government, especially through every industry department, provides a RCMC called Registration Cum Membership Certificate, right? So for every industry such as Apparel Export Promotion Council, okay, AEPC, APEDA called Agricultural Produce Export Development Authority. So there is such department which promotes the export out of India, because Indian government wants more and more export to thrive and boom. So if you become a member of any of these government bodies, they help you in connecting to international buyers. If there is a trade fair happening from the government side, you can join and actively participate. So all of these things keep happening throughout the year, and in your particular field, you can always see if what kind of this authority is there, and you can become a member. Along with it, what kind of trade you are doing. If there is an import happening, then Customs Act. If there is an export happening, then the particular laws of that country. Okay. One thing that is mandatory is a Import-Export Code certificate from the DGFT, okay, known as Director General of Foreign Trade. So I think I was able to explain you what are the standard set of compliances that will apply, right? Then we'll go to the documentation part. Any more questions, please? Yeah.
RCMC, is that very sector specific or?
That's a sector specific. Like I mentioned, for every sector, depending, just like AEPC, Agricultural Export Promotion Council, is set up by Ministry of Textiles, right? So every industry or every department, I would say not every, but most of the departments have set up a export promotion council. These are in general called export promotion councils, right? And they have their offices in all the hubs. For example, I know, let's say Erode and Tirupur is a textile hub in Tamil Nadu. So AEPC has their offices in Erode and all. Even though you are not in a place where they have their regional office, you can always apply it online and become a member of them, and keep in, for example, APEDA, Agricultural Promotion Export Council. Now, if you log into that portal, you will, and you are, let's say, a farmer of agrarian products, then you can check, let's say Singapore has a good demand of rice, Dubai has a good demand of seafood. So all these people who are trying to buy from India, they have a common portal developed by APED and maintained by APED, where they come and see, okay, there are these many rice producers in Andhra. I want this particular variety of rice. So for this particular variety of rice, there are these many rice producers or distributors in India. So they get to interact with you, and you can get in touch with them and all of that. So in general, export promotion happens through those portals and by becoming a member of these entities. Yeah, please.
You mentioned that the factory law will still be applicable even if there are no employees.
No. Factories law, I said Shops and Establishment Act will apply, because these are mostly for soft companies, right? Factories Act has a very strict threshold depending on state to state, right? And you should be consuming a certain number of kilowatt as a energy. You should be having certain number of machines. Then the reporting structure is very, very stringent in Factories Act, right? You have to mention how many machine operators are there, what classes of employees, what classes of laborers are there, and all of these things.
With respect to labor laws, does interns also come under that category?
Only under POSH, Prevention of Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act. Apart from it, not.
So we represent Deepwin.
Sorry?
Deepwin, our company's name is Deepwin. I was in engineering. So Deepwin is basically we build digital twin of a product.
Okay.
Digital twin is nothing but a virtual replica of any product, and we use our tech to collect real-time information of this product. So we use our tech to collect real-time information of the product, and we use that for the product lifecycle management. So my question is, what compliances do we have about the data privacy and collecting the data?
Yeah, can I come to this question later in the IP section?
Yeah, sure.
I'll take a note of this. Sure. Very interesting question and implications under intellectual property law, because you're making a replica of a product and taking the information without, so what kind of permissions, and we'll discuss it later, right, when we comes. Thank you for the question. So we'll move to the next section in the paucity of time. Yeah, please.
Sorry, because recently I was working with CII and then we had a discussion what they said is there are almost 40,000 lines of law.
Correct.
I mean lines of complaints for a company, if
In India.
which we didn't comply to it, we, like a startup or any entrepreneur for that sake, might be put to prison.
Very true, very true. In fact,
like,
if complete
that is
question.
true, like to be very frank, though my family runs a lot of businesses and like I also work with a lot of startups, but to be very frank, I don't know the 40,000
True.
lines of law. Like that is a serious case, right?
Right.
So like how to build our knowledge on those areas.
See, to be practical, this question has come from a lot of entrepreneurs that I've interacted with. So, the job of an entrepreneur is not compliance. It's first making the business, right? Focusing on the numbers, focusing on the sourcing of funds, capital. So, yeah, it's not your job to be engrossed and engaged in compliances. So, what you should ideally do is that you start, grow, and learn along with your journey. Most entrepreneurs who have been successful because they were able to understand the nitty-gritties, or if not nitty-gritties, the logic behind the law. You don't have to understand whatever that is there in the bare act or whatever is there is in the prescribed law. That's the job of a lawyer or a CA or a CS or whoever is dealing with that particular law, right? So you have to work with the lawyers and understand step by step as your business grows. You will face some challenges, will then come and like win over that challenge. So keep growing along with it. But I'll give you some examples such as Reliance winning over this war with Amazon in acquiring the Future Group, right? Elon Musk winning this war over Twitter. They have been able to do that not just because of having a lot of wealth, but because of using the smart legal strategies to win that battle. Like we can discuss about very specific corporate law thing called the blue pill thing that helped Elon Musk and Twitter get into this battle. We can discuss over it, but it's very technical and we'll probably discuss about it later. So the answer to your question is that you can never be compliant. If you are always compliant, then these big MNCs such as you know the names, Tata, Reliance, all these, Birla, they will never need laws. Once all the compliance is done, they will think that we are completely compliant. But I can tell you that all these big companies, they receive legal notices or show cause notices from authorities almost on a daily basis. They do. That's the reality. That's why they have a huge legal team to their for their daily governance. So you can never be 100% compliant. But what should you try to be is try to become compliant, right? In India, the effect of law, is on a, like, you should better know it. You should better be aware of it basis. In US, the effect of law is prescriptive. Like if you are doing this, there is a specific set of laws that you have to do. But having said that, there are certain complexities in US market also, there are certain complexities in Indian market also. The good thing is that Indian regulatory environment is moving towards digitization. So once it's all digitized, it will be easier for us. For example, I don't see that after 5 to 10 years, accounting will be required at all. Once everything is there on Web3 or blockchain, all your transactions are digitized, there is no cash transaction, then it will be automatically, maintained through a particular digital ledger or something. You don't have to do accounting, you don't have to do filings with the government at all. Taxation, accounting will all become automated maybe in the next 5 to 10 years. That's my confidence. So I hope it answers your question. Like you can never be compliant, but what you have to do is have that endeavor to remain compliant, so that you don't have to pay as many fines.
We have to prepare ourselves to like handle these cases.
Correct. There's a 1.5 crores penalty that a big insurance aggregator in the country received. Even after having around 2,000 employees and a team of 10-15 CAs, 10-15 lawyers, they still received that 1 crore penalty from IRDA, the Insurance Regulatory Development Authority of India. So why did that happen? Because sometimes entrepreneurs end up thinking that I will take a loophole to avoid compliance, but at times it may not be the right way to do. And law is all about interpretation. What you interpret the law to be, I may not interpret the same to be, that the law in the same way. So the way the regulator is interpreting the law, maybe your lawyer or your CA is trying to interpret it in the other way and trying to help you get that loophole. So it's all about we trying to satisfy the regulator that we are within the rules, and them trying to catch us or something like that. So all an entrepreneur or a business should be trying to do. Strive to remain compliant as much as you can. That's, yeah. Okay, yeah, we'll move to the next topic, which is risk mitigation by effective use of documentation. Very interesting topic. We are directly connecting the previous topic to this particular topic, which is, to answer your question, interesting question, risk mitigation by effective use of documentation. There are certain compliances that you can do, right? There are certain compliances that you cannot, right? Or you don't, you may not have to do, which may not be mandatory, but to ensure that you are on the safe side, what you can do is do the documentation properly. For example, very good example, are there any Web3 startups here? Any Web3 blockchain based startups, crypto startups? No. So there is no cryptocurrency laws in India, right? There is nothing on cryptocurrency or Web3, okay, through a document, such as your governing policies, right? And the way you're doing transactions with other parties, ensure that your terms and conditions and everything is in the right place, right? But by what? By taking a standard that is there by RBI, like RBI is the money market regulator, so cryptocurrencies will also in the future fall under RBI's domain, unless the government of India brings up another regulator. So whatever RBI has set the standards for normal money market, right, normal financial sector activities, we will take that particular standard and we'll set up our policies. Okay, Money Laundering Act, Banking and Finance Act, whatever standards are prescribed under it, we'll take that standard and we'll create our own policies so that we can, if in the future any action or any change in the law happens by the government, then we are on the safe side. We can say that we followed a particular path which is already set by the RBI, right? If not for exactly our business, but to similar kinds of business as us. Yeah. So how many of you understand what is risk mitigation? In general, it's a very English word. So risk mitigation, what do you understand of it? Yeah.
Reduce the risk.
Reduce the risk. Yeah, it's as simple as that can be.
Identify the risk and then have a plan for it when the risk happens.
Correct. That's exactly what it mentions here also in the slide. Identify the risk, due diligence vis-a-vis the risk assessment, okay, drafting and implementation. So first, you have to identify the risk. I'll continue with the example from cryptocurrency, unless you have some other example to throw at me. Any other person wants to tell about your business and see? I'll tell you the risks. I'll tell you how to identify the risks and how to go. Yeah, please.
So we are into semiconductor.
Semiconductor intellectual property. Yeah, please elaborate because I'm very new to this concept. Yeah.
So we develop the semiconductor modules for applications like the wireless applications in 5G, IoT, and we work with
Great.
the original equipment manufacturers. That is one of our customers. Second would be a foundry, the fab that we call it, semiconductor foundry. So in both these cases, it will be like a revenue sharing model or the royalty model. So one thing that
Revenue sharing model with who?
with the OEMs or the
Foundry.
Foundry, yeah. So how do we know if there is some sort of a violation? I mean, we say like you can use this many number of IPs or number of usage and all that. That will be the term. So how will we do
Understood.
those kind of mitigations?
Understood.
Now, apart from IP filing, IP mitigation is something that we are.
We'll come to it. So, good question. As a disclaimer, like it's not possible for anybody to cover all the risks, right? So what you can do is assess and look at as much risk as you can. So I'll start. We'll go party by party. Let's say with the OEM who is supplying you the components and all. So you will have an agreement with him.
Right.
Why is that agreement needed? We'll start from top-down approach, like identifying the risk. I mean, I'll be able to identify the risk if I understand the engagement bit more, but I'll still attempt. So with the OEM manufacturer or the OEM supplier, you will be sharing certain drawings of the kind of components that you are sharing, that you are planning to make, right? Or ask for certain business secrets that you may have, or you in the process of getting that components, you may be getting from him. Okay, so ensuring that the confidentiality is there in the parts that you are supplying to you. For example, if you have placed an order for a unique set of components or something that is very, very new to this industry, that if your competitors start getting, then there could be an issue. So ensuring that confidentiality through 2-3 types of important important ways or important methods, I would say. First is ensuring that your business engagement is not revealed to anybody. Second, if your business engagement is so important and so innovative in its approach that you would want an exclusivity clause. You would want that OEM to supply components to you only. For example, I can take example from automotives, right? Now I can tell you as a guarantee that, for example, car manufacturers like Hyundai or Maruti, they have exclusivity contracts with a particular OEM that you cannot supply this component to anybody else. For example, Hyundai's clutch system, clutch box is one of the best clutch boxes in the country. Now Hyundai would not want the same OEM to start working with Tata, because there is a very high chance that there will a knowledge exchange happen, right? The OEM might go and say that Hyundai's clutch system is very good because they have this particular technology involved. So sometimes you would also want exclusivity in the clause. Then going over other things such as payment and what time, if you are supplying OEM, by what time should I be paying back to you, right? What should be the debt or the repayment cycle, and and then for example, if let's come back to foundry, will have all of these things and certain other things. If they are manufacturing, then what kind of insurance do they have, because they will be stocking a lot of your components, a lot of your money that you have invested is at stock. Then whether they have insurance or not for that particular item. In case of foundry, it's considered a hazardous environment, so insurance is important. Second thing, whether they are compliant to everything or not. It should not happen that the foundry is not compliant under all the laws and you go and make a deal with them and then next day their shop is shut by the regulators. You would not want that. So these are the common things that you should take care of in a, the risk is identified as these are the common leaks. Then based on that, we will go and we'll sign a MOU, or let's say a manufacturing contract with the foundry, and then a supply contract with the OEM, and ensure that all of these major points, along with the standard operative or boilerplate clauses, along with the standard clauses that should be there in the contract. That's how we should look at this entire exercise, right? So I'll go through the same process. I think I must have helped you understand all the 4 steps.
One simple question, risk, like everywhere we have faced risk, we have insurance coming and helping us.
Not always, but go ahead, yeah.
Is there a legal risk insurance? I'm not sure. I'm just asking.
not that I've heard of in India.
Okay.
Not that no, it happens. I've seen it happening in Hong Kong and Singapore, but not in India. Not in India, yeah.
My question is, for example, in our case, a majority of the materials that we'll be making is highly strategic in nature. So
Strategic as in?
it would be
Mike?
very useful for the aerospace and defense industry. For example, the governmental agencies,
Okay.
defense and aerospace.
Okay.
So already there are restrictions of the products that we can get it outside the country. What about the products that we can send from the country, like the export restrictions for these products, like how we can know about it?
Good question. So, like I mentioned earlier, export restrictions, primarily you have to delve with the laws of the importing countries, right? On the export side, at the most that you have to care about is the taxation part, right? Apart from it, there are also export restrictions on certain materials or certain items, which is defined under the DGFT circulars. Okay, we'll have to look at it because it will be very specific. I can take out time to help you with that. But for example, I'll give you some examples that you cannot export petroleum or petrol because it's something that Indian government wants, or that's required for energy is required for Indian people. So Indian government doesn't want the export to happen. Okay, neither do you have the channel to export it. Second, for example, anything to do with 5G telecom, which is highly available, highly required resource, and space technology, nuclear technology, defense technologies. For these kind of items, you can think that export is restricted. Other than that, normal items, it's very easily defined. DGFT has a circular such as what kind of items can be imported and exported, what kind of items cannot be imported and exported. But you have to look at those circulars and find out if you fall under any of these categories. All right, sure. Yeah, no issues, yeah.
The liability class, something like us, young entrepreneurs, like we generally tend to get worried more because I know like in US there are a lot of class action happening against big people, basically based on liability class.
You're talking about consumer centric laws, yeah.
I mean, even like in industry centric processes, like for instance, we do send chemicals, or like for instance, like we say like we are doing a deep in, we give continuous feedback, and if there is one faulty framework, okay, because of which they read the data for like 3, it is getting displayed as 30, so they start doing certain action, okay, but that does not happen when we have some faulty issues in our sensors, okay, now because of which the entire production line will come to an halt.
Okay.
It's a simple sensory fault. Okay. Now that is, we could be the reason for it because of a simple malfunctioning of one of our sensor or one of our code has gone broke during the process. Now the entire company might come and sue me. There's a liability class for me. Like I might go bankrupt in handling the entire liability.
Understood. What's your name again?
Vimal.
So Vimal here is talking about the indemnification and limitation of liability clause. We'll deal with it once we come to the next few slides. But liability in India is usually of 2 to 3 types. By law, 2 types. Mostly under consumer laws, there is a concept of product liability. If you are manufacturing or supplying any goods or services to the consumer, then till what extent are you liable? For what kind of events, what kind of specific scenarios you are liable? That is one set. Second is a very interesting law called TORT, T-O-R-T. It's one of the first laws taught to us in law schools. It basically says that you should not do anything willingly harmful to anybody around you, right? It can be of civil or criminal nature or whatever. But so yeah, that's tort law. Tort law is something that is always scenario based. It's undefined. It doesn't have a particular act or statute. It's just a concept under which the courts sometimes give their judgment and opinion. Then the third set of is inter-party liability, which is defined in your contract. As simple as that. All right. Yeah.
So we are basically developing a technology in jet engine action compressors. We have a product patented like So what are the risks we will be facing in the next?
Again, I can deal it within the IP section. Okay.
Okay.
Sure. Thank you. So I'll quickly run through this. So these are the standard set of policies and contracts that a business will have to do in their normal life cycle of the business. Correct. There could be certain items that are not covered here, but what I mean to say is these are standard ones. So in the policy, like you can see, there are 3 major segments: customer facing policies, HR policies, governance policies. Okay. What are the customers facing policies? The standard ones: terms of service, privacy, refund policy, or shipping policy, or account usage policy, or content policy. I think it's pure English so everybody understands it. What should be the element of each of these policy is something that you can explore once you start working on it. And it has to be very, very core to your company's vision and your company's, what environment do you want to create for your customer. That should be, primary approach of defining these policies. No lawyer can define these policies better than the business owner. I can tell it. The lawyer can only help you draft it, right? What kind of innovation or creativity in terms of refund mechanism do you want to develop for your companies? Now, the companies who have been able to successfully hold their customers and maintain that loyalty are the ones who have come up with, leading thought process. For example, the kind of refund mechanism Amazon has. We all feel, Amazon was able to catch up to Flipkart after entering almost 5-6 years late to the market only because of the refund policies Amazon has. Right? We all have assurance that maybe Amazon will refund my item before, quickly as compared to Flipkart if anything goes wrong. So, yeah, the customer policies is very important if you are a B2C one. Even if you are not a B2C one, then most of your B2B dealings will be dealt under here in the contract, business contract side. Will come there later. HR policies, again these days very, very important, especially for tech companies which are very, very in need of good talent, good HR talent. So it's very important for you to create a good environment for your employees. Otherwise, I was hearing some thought leaders speaking on YouTube that India's current generation of employees are like third generation of employed people, so they care more about their work environment than anything else, right? If you're not happy from your workspace, you will leave and you start your own startup or something, do something, start making content on YouTube. There's so much of something to do that it's now the onus is on the employers, on the business owners, on the to give a proper work environment, right? And some common policies that you should always have is a leave and attendance policy, your code of conduct, the work from home policies these days, very important. Then POSH. POSH is prevention of sexual harassment against women at workplace. So to tell you, most people tend to ignore POSH, but it has become mandatory for any organization with more than 10 employees, and even if one of them is a female, right? It's become mandatory. You cannot avoid it. There will be a penalty because the authority of reporting for every other labor and HR laws is basically the labor department in the state. But for the authority for POSH is your district magistrate, right? That's the only difference how POSH is differentiated from other labor laws. Now coming to the governance policies, ESG policy lately catching up and in the limelight, environment, social and governance policies. Something very important for your company, because you are into something that may damage the environment in a way, or so what you can do is create your ESG policy wherein you are clearly stating out that these are the things that we are doing to safeguard the environment against the byproduct or the effluents that we are leaving to the environment, right? So, and there are other components under ESG policy as well. The article of association, basically article of association is something that you go as a standard template under your company's incorporation, but one thing to keep in mind that you can also innovate in a article of association. What kind of relationship do you want with your other promoters of the company? What kind of specific changes you would want? Sometimes those article of association can play a very effective want to manage your equity, how to manage your want to manage your company's internal governance and all of that. Then ESOP, employee stock option plans, ethics policy you can also develop, and then CSR policy. If you are a company, mostly I think not that important for startups, but if you are a company which is into which is listed and has a turnover, significant turnover, there is a mandate for CSR. But nonetheless, even if you are a startup, these days startups are also going into CSR, right? If you are creating value, creating revenue, there are a lot of startups I know in Bangalore, also tech-based startups, who are engaging into CSR, like donating certain plants to the nearby society, or spreading education. Like for example, Byju's, we know they are all infamous, but they are trying to get into a lot of CSR now by creating rural healthcare, rural education, schools, and all of that. Now coming to contracts, any questions on policy side?
ESOP is mandatory.
No, ESOP is not mandatory. ESOP is something that is on your company's creativity. It's a retention tool. ESOP is a retention tool. None of the policies or contracts can be mandatory. I can tell you that. Here, POSH as a policy you can always keep. POSH compliance is something else that I explained under the labor law compliances, right? POSH compliance is mandatory for 10 employees with any one female employee, 10 employees or more. POSH policy is something that you can keep even if you are less than 10, 4 to 5 employees. Now coming to contracts, there are 3 major types of contracts. I think most of you will understand. If you don't, you can always ask me. Transactional, business, employment. Transactional is all to do with your company's transactions, investments coming in, investments going out, the kind of revenue sharing you want to do between founders or your business partners, a joint venture. So some examples are founders agreement, term sheet, shareholders, share purchase, loan, joint venture agreements, your consortium agreements. There are so many. Then on the business contract side, we were talking to them, they will have certain vendors, certain foundries or OEMs. So vendor contracts, service level contracts, right? If somebody is giving you a service, then service level contracts, non-disclosure, distribution, franchisee, MOUs, licensing contracts. We'll deal with licensing contracts of the product-based startup that we are going to deal with. How the licensing will happen in the IP, because licensing is all dependent on the IP sharing and mostly on that. Then employment, last but not the least. I think out of all the things, employment contract is a basic thing that everybody will require, right? While you are hiring an employees, ensuring that they are not running away with anything important for your business, they are not absconding, they are not, they are regular to their work. So employment contracts are always dependent on your HR policies. So if you have HR policies, then that's the best thing, because it's a thing that is standard to apply to all the employees. Then the only extra layer or extra derivative that you can do in an employment contract is basically create different levels of employment, such as executive level employment, manager level employment, senior manager level employment, CXO level employment, right? So you can create different derivatives of the employment contract. CXO level will get certain elements of ESOP, for example, or certain more privileges than the manager level, and it goes on like that. Then depending on the type of employment, freelancer and consultancy contracts and all of that. Then offer letter, grant letter, termination letter are the other common forms. Okay, so here the chapter for your compliance and documentation ends, right? We'll go to intellectual property. I think I'll straight away. How much time do we have? 10-15 more minutes? We are already over the time.
Yeah, we're just taking a break time, but I think we can go for 10 minutes.
Sure. I'll quickly run through the intellectual property and I'll take these two questions that we already have on IP. So yeah, common types of IP, as you can see, I don't have to run it into the details, but most things that startups here will require is basically trademark for sure, because all of you will have a brand. All of you will have a brand nonetheless. Patents, if you are into tech business or creating any product, patents are important. Industrial designs also, a lot of entrepreneurs don't know how to differentiate between a patent and an industrial design. You might end up thinking that, okay, my product is not patentable, so it's okay, I'll just not go for patent and there's nothing else that I can do. But industrial design is a thing that can help you do a lot of things. This design of the bottle, right, unique. Design of a Maaza bottle, even if you look at it, you will be able to differentiate, okay, this is Maaza bottle. Why? Because it is protected under Designs Act. It is protected under Designs Act. Nobody else can make another similar looking bottle to Maaza bottle, right? Adidas shoe, right? If that particular design is protected, then nobody else can make a item similar to that. In fact, if you were talking about making semiconductors or something, if it's not patentable, I can understand if that particular item is not patentable. If due to the design of it, if it is adding any particular value, then it is you can protect it under Designs Act. For example, the toothbrush. Imagine, that's the best common example. A toothbrush with a tongue cleaner at the rear end, right? So it's something. A toothbrush is usually used for what? Brushing your teeth. But somebody thought, no, I'll add a tongue cleaner at the end. So it's not an invention as such, right? Tongue cleaners are not an invention. Tongue cleaners have existed. But adding a tongue cleaner to the rear end of a toothbrush, that's a design innovation. So you in US, somebody got the design protection almost like 30-40 years back for this toothbrush concept, right? So copyright also, you can take your business model, you can protect under copyright, right? The business plan, and then other things. Trade secrets and plant varieties are not something we're going to. Interesting slide on like with IP protection, you stand out. Okay, these are some statistics for our Vakil Search IP portfolio. We have done more than, I mean, this slide is a bit old, so we have done more than 180 patents till now. Trademark number has also significantly gone up, and designs also I think in trademark, copyright and designs, we are the leading service provider in the country. Just yeah. Things that can be registered as a trademark: the name, your brand name, basically your logo, tagline, packaging, and colors, sound and colors also. Okay. Trademark should not be deceptive, generic, or offensive or anything. You can't use an offensive or vulgar word as your trademark, right? You cannot also, I cannot make a Bilseri out of a Bisleri, right? So these are some things that you cannot make as a trademark. These are some examples of registered trademark. Like this sound, you must have seen this sound, very authentic and very popular sound. This sound is trademarked, right? And tagline, just do it, is trademarked. Name and logo, the McDonald M symbol is trademarked. Then copyright are mostly of 4 to 5 types: literary copyright, artistic copyright, your image copyright, cinematograph, basically anything on film, then your sound copyright, right? The latest one which was added in 1999 was software copyright. Basically codes, object codes or source codes are also copyrightable, right? So if you can fit in even your 5th grade, cousin's painting, if you think it's unique, it can be. There's no qualifying criteria that this can be copyrighted. It just has to be original in nature, and it has to fall under any of these categories. If you think my business model that I've written, business plan that I've written is so innovative, so unique that it needs to be protected so that nobody else can copy it, then it can be. If a movie script can be copyrighted, why can a business plan not be copyrighted? Right? And yeah, so there's a big copyright case, famous case, where the image also was one, and they had a very good. If you file a copyright case, then you very high chances of you getting the compensation and all. Also, let me tell you, in case of IP infringement, you don't need a search warrant if you have enough evidence. We have done cases for certain glass companies, certain drink companies in the past where they were making the copy ones. Okay, so we went to the police with the cops in Delhi and Ghaziabad area. We conducted the raids even without any search warrant, right? So that's the protection IP laws give. Extra layer of protection IP laws give you. Duplicates, yeah, correct.
They are selling the same name.
Same name or same relevant name. Like for example, I gave Cadbury chocolates have a copy knockoff called Cadbury or something like that with the very same design and just the switching of the name. Adidas, Abibas, something like that. Yeah. So yeah, the patent very important for you. We'll take this over after the session is done, maybe one-to-one. Patent has to be new, inventive, and industrially applicable. If you design something that is new and inventive, but human society cannot use it, what's the point of it? If you design something which helps you fall faster from a building and to the down, it's not usable for the human society, so it's not required. So it's not patentable. No matter how you will see on YouTube videos where this guy from China is making, they're calling him Chinese Einstein or something like that, but he makes absolutely no use inventions. It's not patentable. It should be new. It should be inventive, right? Inventive is the most crucial part of a patent, and yeah. Process, machine, manufactured items, composition matters can be patentable in India. In US, softwares are also patentable. Only softwares are not patentable in India, but a software in attachment with a particular hardware can be patented in India. For example, I design a software that helps my neural framework to connect with a artificial limb. Then that software is patentable. Then design I explained to you. Yeah.
Variance, the moment we patent the product, right? See, there are a lot of technical people out there who could understand the product and easily bring in a delta variation.
Okay.
Small variation in the product, they themselves can come up with similar patent.
Good question. So it is usually done through a patent search where we understand what is the inventive step. If I had more time, I would give an example. For example, you must have seen it. Can you give me some examples? For example. Like radio to a transistor, right? The difference between a radio and a transistor, a lot of young guys may not understand it, but it's that it just catches extra layer of frequencies, right? So that it's not delta enough to give transistors a different set of patent, right? So transistors were never given patents. They're basically run through as similar to radios only. Immaterial of they were able to catch extra set of frequencies. So that's the thing. Whether
said, right?
the delta is not fixed.
You said extra set of frequencies, right?
Yeah.
And that itself becomes a delta.
No, but that's not a delta enough. Inventive step means it should be having a newer technology in terms of a new set of inventions which create a extra mechanism. Extra mechanism, or basically it's subjective from the patent office, one patent office to the other patent office. Indian patent office may accept something as an invention. US patent office will not accept that invention. It's very subjective, depending on the laws and the rulings by the courts, the high courts and patent tribunals in India. So if you bring a particular question to me, maybe in my opinion I can share or some patent attorney can share whether that's patentable or not, right? It's very subjective. There's no one way of answering it. Due diligence to manage IP, we also actively do the due diligence to manage IP. If you're going for a trademark, what are the chances of you getting the trademark of your particular brand or logo in that particular category? What are the similar names? We can do a trademark search and tell you what are the similar names and what are the chances of you getting it. You cannot take generic trademarks. So if your name is a generic name, then how do you get it?
Tata is having a generic trademark.
Tata does not have a generic trademark.
Tata is like if you take, it's a very common commercial.
Yeah, but Tata goes under an exception. Tata is so well known that it's a well known trademark. Now, well known trademark is something that is given by the Central Patent Authority or the High Courts. Now, well known trademark is something that has become so popular in the industry that immaterial of it being generic or even in existence before or something, it will definitely get registered, right? So, well known trademarks are a different exceptions. But I'm not too sure if Tata is a generic name. Like in English word or English dictionary, Tata may not have a meaning and at that point of time.
I know, I read a case where like Tata went after a company called TataBuyBuy.com.
Correct. Because they are a registered trademark. So they can go and sue others now.
TataBuyBuy.com was also registered.
Yeah, Tata is registered.
Tata was also registered.
Tata Bye-Bye you are saying was also registered.
Yeah, TataBuyBuy.com was also registered.
Okay.
Tata was also registered.
Correct.
And they went to the court to settle it. But in the registration process, both was allowed.
Both was?
Allowed.
Alone means?
Allowed.
Allowed. I can understand. So now there's an exception here. Good thing that you brought up. Even if your company is registered under the MCA, under a name which is already there, right? Which is where the company is already there. Foreign company, subsidiary company also are considered. Even you have got a registration under trademark, but there is already existing well-known trademark. Normal trademark, registered trademark cannot compete with another registered trademark. It has to be a long battle in court. But if you are a well-known trademark, then you can sideline the registered trademark as well. That's the power well-known trademarks have. But you have to be very popular in more than 3 to 4 states in India. You need to have a presence in the commercials, in the advertisements, and you need to have a very well-known presence in across Indian markets. Then you can, and after 5 years, I think 5 years, 5 years from your registration date, you can go and get well-known trademark, right? And if even if your company name has been approved, there is a chance that within a year, if a company was already registered with the same name prior to you, they can go and ask the MCA to revoke your name. That can also happen, right? So there are always exceptions. If you want to fight it, then you can fight it in a court. Enforcement of IP, I told you how like Trademark Watch, we have a product called Trademark Watch, for example. A lot of other companies also have, where you can, through basically machine learning and other tools, we keep looking at what other trademarks are coming, which are trying to infringe our trademark, right? So we keep a watch for you that. And like I mentioned, raid action, right? Civil proceedings. After raid action, civil proceeding can come, right? Also FIR can be lodged. So all of these things are there, and if you are a protected IP.
No criminal proceedings.
No, criminal procedures are also allowed under IP. If you are making knockoffs, then you can go for criminal procedure also. Criminal procedure is a strategy which you can use for any immediate gain against somebody who is working on a very small scale. But if a formal company is trying to do something, then there's a good chance that you can claim heavy civil remedies from there. In civil, the compensation is higher in terms of monetary benefit. In criminal, it's more of like your threat or more like your immediate action that you want to do. Like he's a chota mota seller who's trying to do this. I'll just call him to the police station and make him sit in the cough. They will give him 2 words and then he'll mend his ways. That is when you go for FIR in case of IP. Alright. Or any organized crime is happening against your company's product, right? Then also you can go to criminal route. Alright, I think we are done with today's session. We'll take 2 more minutes for questions. Cool. Yeah. So sorry, I think we had 2 questions from. Can we take it from them? You can start otherwise. You don't mind, right? Yeah, sure. No, I had 2 pending questions from them. I thought I'll deal with them. Yeah.
Sir, my name is Muhammad Rashid.
Hi, Mohammed.
Yeah, sir, I'm from Space Rolls Aerospace.
Sorry?
Space Rolls Aerospace.
Okay, Spice Rolls.
Space Rolls.
Please.
So we are into innovation of jet engines. So we need a strategy to go out of the country as well.
Okay, it will be very elaborate. Can we talk one-on-one after this session?
Okay, sure.
Sure. Thank you. Can you come again with the question now? I'll deal with it now so that I've.
Okay. Explain what is digital twin regarding or
Can you be a bit more louder?
I explained about digital twin. So you got a what's digital twin, right?
Yeah, you make replicas of product.
Virtual environment. In a virtual environment.
Like what kind of product?
Yeah, it can be in the manufacturing assembly line. A product.
Give me an example, a live example, a popular example or something.
Okay, if a chair is getting built, I will deploy my sensors in it and I can show the manufacturer how the chair is getting built in the virtual environment with the real collection of real-time data of the product. So that's that's what D-Twin does. So my question is, we collect information from the industries. So there are a lot of data getting involved here. So what kind of regulations should we follow? Like.
Okay. So first and foremost, for you to embed a replica into somebody else's product, approvals and permissions, inter-party information is very important. Like that's the most important thing, because you're not interacting with the consumers. So all the consumer set of regulations you can just park to the side, right? And you're completely an IT company. So most compliances do not apply to you, right? So you take it and save it in the cloud. So two important aspects. One is the inter-party dealing, correct? With whosoever's product you are working on, the data privacy angle is very important, and also data privacy under Information Technology Act. How you are collecting that data, where you are storing that data. Currently, India does not have a personal data protection bill as of now. It's been pending after Sri Krishna committee since like 5 years, but I don't also see it happening very soon. Let's say in the assembly line process, let's say you install your product in an airport check-in counter, correct? Something that you can do, yes. Right? So in that case, if you are collecting information about individuals, right? Although there is no data protection bill, but then under normal IT Act, Information Technology Act, there is a onus on you to ensure that that data of normal average Indian user, average Indian citizen is not getting leaked or used for anything negative. Right, so that's the onus on you. If that is one angle, but apart from it, the inter-party angle, which is let's say Chennai Airports Authority Limited, for example, has given you that you collect my data and you help me in better traffic management, right? That's exactly something you do. Yes. So ensuring purely your work is on contracts only. Ensuring that how do you handle the data, in what server that you handle the data. There is a rule that I mentioned, Information Security Practices rules. So as per that rules, whether you're adhering to those rules or not is something that you have to take care of. Apart from it, compliances on the labor side, you just have to take a shops and establishment, basically take care of how many employees you have and all of that. Other than that, most compliances don't apply to you. If you're going to register as an entity, like private limited, statutory compliances will apply. As if I can think of, there is no regulatory compliance for you. Yeah. Apart from the information security rules under IT Act, which is not a compliance, just a guidelines that you have to adhere to. Sure. That's all. Yeah, your question, please. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this session with you and interacting with you. I also gained a lot. I always think that entrepreneur and lawyer are coexisting factors where lawyers get to know more and more about the business, and the entrepreneurs get to know more and more about the legal side of things. So thank you and very good afternoon. Have a great day. Bye.